Hey love, it's Angelica. Welcome or welcome back. If you are new, today we are talking about how to grow your edges back fast, how to grow your hairline, how to make your hairline full and thick and healthy. And at the end of this video, I will link the playlist with all the other edges tips I've given before. So I'll try my best not to repeat myself in this video so you guys can learn something new. Consider subscribing. The subscription button is right down there as well as the bell icon. Make sure you hit the bell so you get notifications every single time I post a video like this. Okay, so the first tip is one of the most important tips that will help you, and all these other tips will help you if you know what I'm talking about in the first tip. If you are not aware of the first one, everything else will not be as effective, or you will continue to be disappointed with products and people giving you advice about your edges thinking it doesn't work. And this is, you first need to discover the source of the hair loss on your edges. If you don't know the source, it will be very, very difficult to treat it. Is it because of relaxers? Is it because of heat damage? Is it because of traction alopecia from hairstyles that are too tight? Is it because you have a terrible diet? Is it because you wear hats all the time, or you wear your head wraps too tight? Do you wear buns all the time? Is it just aging? Is it an illness? Is it postpartum shedding? There are so many options for what could be causing your hair loss. And the best way to find this out if you are unsure is try to go back and figure out when your hair started shedding. When did you start experiencing more hair loss on your hairline? Is it a couple months ago? Is it years ago? Is it very recently? And then you can go back to whatever that time is when you started noticing your hairline thinning. And if you have any pictures, try and look back at the pictures you have. Is it the hairstyle you were doing? Were you sick during that time? Have you been doing the same hairstyle for years? Whatever it is, try and find out what the issue is. And if you've gone back and you've done all that and you can't figure out what the source of your hair loss is on your hairline, and be honest to yourself. Do not lie to yourself and be like, well, I see people do micro braids all the time and their hair doesn't fall out, but for some reason my hair is falling out, so it must be something else. No, be truthful to yourself. And after all that, if you find that you still can't figure out why your hairline is shedding or why your edges are moving further back, you need to speak to a dermatologist or a trichologist, or they might just be able to figure out whatever source the hair loss is coming from. So that is very important, because if I tell you to do some of these tips and it doesn't work, it might be that the problem is not one of these tips, okay? It might be something else you're doing yourself. Okay, so let's go to tip 2. This is something now specifically that I truly recommend for hair growth. And this is a treatment that is DIY. You can make it yourself. If you don't want to make it yourself, you can try and purchase something similar. But for me, the most effective one has been this specific oil mix. And this is rosemary oil, but it is not rosemary essential oil by itself. No, it is just a very easy oil that you can make yourself. It doesn't require you to use the actual rosemary leaves or dry rosemary, anything like that. I do have a video that I can link at the end of this one as well, so you can see how to make DIY rosemary oil. But I wanted this one to be as easy as possible so you can just quickly buy the ingredients and then make it. So let's get into that little demo and you can see how to make the rosemary oil. So we are starting with a nice little glass bottle dropper. This is actually an old skincare bottle. I always reuse anything with a dropper. We are starting with some castor oil, which is going to be the most. We are only using 1 carrier oil, and I'm using 1/8 of a cup. You can even use up to half of this. And don't be silly like me and use a little funnel instead of just pouring it. But if this is all you have, you can find a way to finesse it so you don't spill like I did. So all you need is that, and it will fill your standard size bottle dropper. Now we're using some rosemary oil, and this is from the brand Majestic Pure. I invested in a huge bottle because this is absolutely my favorite essential oil. You don't have to use the one from this specific brand. You just have to use pure 100% rosemary oil, not mixed in with anything. It is amazing and it is one of the key ingredients, but please, just because it's a lot, do not be confused and use this directly on your scalp. You will have bad side effects and you most likely will not see them immediately. They might come even months later. So please don't be tempted just because it doesn't burn. So I put about 15 drops of the rosemary oil in there. If I was using a much lighter oil, I would have used about 7 to 10 drops, but castor oil is very thick, so it kind of like it's not as saturated as if you use something like an olive oil, for me at least. So now peppermint oil by Handcraft. I added another 15 drops of that as well. So the three ingredients are simple: castor oil, rosemary oil, and peppermint oil. Now remember that the most essential oils here are the rosemary oil and the peppermint oil. The castor oil is also amazing for the hairline because it is a very thickening oil and it is usually very affordable. You can also use Jamaican black castor oil if you prefer. I find that Jamaican black castor oil and regular castor oil actually work the same for me, but Jamaican black castor oil is way more expensive. So I just buy this one because it works better. Use whichever one works better. And if you don't have that, you can use any other carrier oil like olive oil, grapeseed oil, but my preference is castor oil specifically for the edges. As you can see, that's how the rosemary oil is made. It is very, very simple, and you can actually use this every single day depending on your hair. So for me, I have quite full edges and my hair is very thick and coarse, so nothing really weighs it down a lot. So even if I use this oil every single day, my edges would still feel fine. And the reason why you can use it every day is because your hairline is right here. And if you are like most people and you wash your hair every single day with a cleanser, there is a chance that you continuously wash off whatever's on your hairline. And that could even be causing a bit of your breakage because your hairline is just so dry. So every time I want to moisturize my edges, I will literally get the tiniest bit of moisturizer on my hands, put it on my hairline, and then go ahead and put the oil, do a little scalp massage, and then that's done. So you can actually do that every single day. However, if you start to feel like your hair feels like too soft or like a little mushy, you can do every other day or every 2 days, apply the oil. You really don't need too much. You need the tiniest bit of this oil onto your hairline. Rosemary oil truly promotes hair growth. It promotes hair regrowth, helps prevent traction alopecia as long as you have no scarring. The castor oil also helps thicken your hair, so it makes the actual hair shaft like appear thicker, and it just promotes thicker, fuller hair strands. So those oils together, I know a lot of people would say, well, you can just use castor oil by itself. Absolutely, you can just use castor oil by itself. You can use olive oil by itself. But if you use a combination, you are maximizing the chances of getting bits and benefits from different oils to get the best benefits. So you can use whatever you want, but for me, this is the most effective one, using rosemary oil mixed with castor oil, rosemary oil, peppermint. It is a bomb for me, okay? You need to try it. The third thing you can do to help your hairline or your edges grow back fast is to not fear chemical/medical products. I know a lot of people would say like, no, well, you've already told me that castor oil and whatever oil mix, like it works well enough. But just because it works for me and many other people, the state of your hair and how far you've gone, the extent of your damage, this oil might still not be enough. You might still need something that is stronger, like a pretty high percentage of something like minoxidil. You can even use the men's Rogaine, even if you are a woman. I have seen dermatologists recommend this. So what you need to do is go to a dermatologist so that they can assess your scalp, and they can probably prescribe something like a minoxidil for you to use on your hairline. Do not fear it. I know a lot of people would say, oh my God, no, because it's a medication, it's a chemical, it's going to damage my hair. No, it's not. Just think about it. If you have an extremely bad headache right now, you have a terrible headache or a terrible backache, you are most likely not going to be like, let me find some sort of like mint infusion peppermint to put on my head and see if it's going to help. Like if it's something that's very mild, that's when you'll be like, you know what, I heard putting peppermint oil on your temple can help with headaches, which that's actually true. You can actually be like, let me try that. But if you are in severe pain and all you want is the pain to stop right now, you are going to run and get the strongest medication that you can handle so that you can get rid of that as quick as possible. It is pretty much the same thing with your hair. The rosemary oil and all that, like, it can probably help you, but if you reach an extreme point where, like, you know what, I think I need medical help, do not fear it. It is not only for men, it is not only for people with a certain type of hair texture. As long as you have hair on your hairline, curly or bone straight, this can help you. So try and seek some kind of medical grade treatment. So if you have severe hair loss, like a 50% loss, like you have lost 50% of the hair that's usually on your hairline, you might even want to go for a medical treatment that's a little bit more invasive and unfortunately more expensive than something like a topical minoxidil, which can be up to like between $40 and $60 for like between 2 months to a year, depending on the strength and how often you're supposed to use it. And then there's things like PRP. This is basically where they get your own blood, they spin it, and then they separate the platelets from your blood, and it's like this gold yellow infusion that they call liquid gold. They do a similar thing on the face as well, but they can actually do this on your hairline, and this can cost all the way up to $5,000. Of course, it can be way less, but if you have an extreme level of hair loss, this may have to be an option if you don't want it to continue getting worse. The fourth tip is something that is highly overlooked, and it ties in a little bit with the first one because most of us consider hair loss when it comes to specifically postpartum shedding, a very severe illness, or, of course, physical manipulation. People tend to neglect diet because they think, well, I mean, I'm not like extremely overweight or I'm not like extremely underweight. So you think, I'm probably healthy enough. I seem healthy enough. It might be affecting your hair growth. You might be deficient in a couple nutrients like vitamin D, B vitamins, iron, collagen, aka protein. This can all affect hair growth and specifically your edges because your edges are already the weakest part of your hair. It is also the easiest place for you to notice when you've lost some hair. And if you don't eat well, your body is going to prioritize all your vital organs, and then whatever little scraps are left over are going to go to your hair. So that's why your hair might be breaking more, your edges might be shedding more, your hair might just be in terrible condition, and you might not realize it is just your diet. And of course, water is part of that diet as well. Now, speaking of diet, a lot of people would take this point and just run, not walk, run to the supplements, okay? Here's the thing. I personally take supplements as well, but they are not replacements. And the reason why I'm even taking quite a few supplements right now, I actually made a video all about it, is because I was really sick for 2 months. So when you are sick and your immune system drastically drops, almost everything is, of course, already fighting to get you back to health. So you might need a few extra vitamins, but once you are back into your normal routine and you're back in good health, you only need to supplement things that you know you will most likely not find in your diet. For example, I do not eat a lot of red meat. I'm not vegan or vegetarian or pescatarian, but I just tend to eat a lot more seafood and fish and chicken. I rarely eat any kinds of red meat. I also don't have a huge appetite, so I find that most of the time for me to get satisfied enough while eating a good balance of food, I usually don't meet my recommended levels of iron. I had been in the house for so long not going for any walks because of my illness again, and I was working from home. I still work from home, of course. So I was really lacking in vitamin D, and I didn't even know that vitamin D can severely stunt your hair growth and extremely increase your hair shedding. So I've been taking vitamin D. I also take a hair, skin, and nails vitamin and just a regular multivitamin. So things like, I know I'm going to say it because you're probably thinking it, biotin. Biotin will only help you if you are deficient in biotin, okay? And it is very rare that someone is severely deficient in biotin. Usually, you can get your recommended amount of extra biotin from whatever other vitamins you take. So if you take a multivitamin or like a hair, skin, and nails vitamin, there's probably enough biotin in there to make up for whatever you're missing because there's biotin in so much food like eggs, mushroom, fish. A lot of food contains biotin, and I tend to eat a lot of foods that contain biotin as well, like eggs and fish. And so you really don't need like 10,000 mcgs. It's also water soluble. So if you don't drink enough water, it can break you out. Also, it's just going to be wasted, and there's no need for your liver to be processing all those unnecessary vitamins if you don't need them. You're basically just going to peel out all the excess, and essentially you're just wasting your money, okay? So if you are not deficient in something, just like recently the video I made specifically about vitamin D for hair growth, if you are not deficient in vitamin D, taking extra vitamin D is not going to help you, okay? It's just excess. It's just going to go to waste, and it's actually unhealthy to take an excess of anything if you do not need it. Okay, the fifth one, all these points are also extremely important, but this one is the one that sounds the most like common sense. But you know how it is. Despite knowing common sense, we still do the things. We're out here Googling how to lose weight. How do I lose this much weight in this week? But you know what you eat. You know what the problem is. You just want to find a loophole. So this one is, if you know what is causing your hair loss, and it is something like traction alopecia, like you always put your hair in tight buns, you always have tiny braids or something like that, it is very simple. Just stop. Stop doing whatever is causing your hair loss. It is that simple. Now, the second part to this tip is one that I think is even more important than the first part, because I've noticed that a lot of people would even ask me, like, they would ask me for advice and then answer their own question. Usually, this is in person. They'll be like, "Oh, I can see your edges are so full. My hairline has been really thinning, and I usually do lots of those tiny braids, and now I've stopped doing them, and my hair is like growing back so well." And I'm like, "Okay, so you've discovered the problem, it's working." And then I meet them like 2 to 3 months later, and they have the same hairstyle back in. And so this tip is, after you've discovered what the problem is and you've stopped doing it, if you notice that your hair is growing back and it's looking healthier and full, don't rush and go back to the same hairstyle that caused the same damage, because you're going to be back in the same place, and then you're going to start thinking that what you were doing didn't work, or maybe it wasn't necessarily the cause of your hair loss. It absolutely is the cause of your hair loss, and if you stop doing it, you need to permanently stop, or at least do it so infrequently that it really doesn't affect your hair loss. For example, if you constantly wear weaves and you always want to do leave out and match your hair to your actual wig, and so you have severe hair damage and your hair just continues breaking and breaking. I used to have this issue. My hairline used to be extremely short. The hair wouldn't come out, but it would all be broken. It would literally be this length right here. And then if I would do whatever part, like if I would do a weave in the middle part all the time, I would have very short hair, like just up to here in the middle part, because of constantly trying to blend it with the wig. And so then the hair would just continuously break and break. So what you want to do is simply stop. Find another hairstyle. If you always do weaves and you're addicted to weaves, maybe try doing a part somewhere else once in a while. Maybe try headband wigs, because then you don't need to do any leave out. Maybe you can just try a different hairstyle. If you're constantly doing micro braids and then you stop, if you really love them that much, maybe instead of doing them like 8 times a year, maybe do it twice, okay? But it all depends on how much you love your hairline, okay? Sometimes maybe you just don't care that much. So then, it's not that important. Another reason why I always stress for you to stop doing what's causing your hair loss is because, especially on your hairline, it can have a very similar effect to waxing. So let's say you wax your armpits, right? The reason why a lot of people like to do it is because after you wax your armpits a couple times, the hair is going to start growing back like thinner and sparser. That's basically what's going to happen to your hairline. Every time you do those little tight hairstyles and you're pulling your hair out, eventually you're going to start damaging your follicles, and you might even cause scarring, which means in certain areas that hair can never grow back naturally because it is scarred over. And then the other hair that can grow back naturally is going to start growing like very sparse and very thin and fine, because the follicle is already damaged. So the hair is growing, but it's damaged. So the best way is to just stop and try and reverse the damage and take care of your hairline extremely well, and you could start to reverse that. Now, let's say you are watching this video and you are already past all these points, everything that I've given you, you've gone way past that. You have severe scarring where it's literally just bald, or you have so many patches where your hair is completely bald. It is smoothed over. It looks like hair is never going to grow back. There could be one of two reasons. You have caused severe scarring yourself, like you have traction alopecia, you have completely damaged your hairline and it is smoothed over, or it's caused by something like alopecia areata, where it is still, the hair looks basically the same. You're in the same situation, it is smoothed over, you have scarring, and the hair can't grow back naturally. None of these previous tips will help you. Unfortunately, the only thing that you can do is a hair transplant. Now, I know a lot of people are like a little bit scared, like, is it gonna work on me? Because it's very popular with other races, not necessarily Black people. Although recently we've seen more transplants being done, specifically by men, like, LeBron James, Tory Lanez, and a bunch of these people. Safari, I think, have all got hair transplants. and it literally reverses everything. Like the hair just looks so perfect. You cannot see any scarring. And studies have been done to show that curly hair, African American hair, whatever you want to call it, is actually extremely successful when it comes to hair transplants. It takes very well. So this is actually reversible. You can be able to restore your entire hairline using the hair transplant, and it will actually stay. The only problem is if you can help it, meaning if you are in a stage before these, you want to make sure that you try not to get to the stage, because while this is extremely effective, it takes about a day's work, so maybe about 8 hours or more, depending on how much hair needs to be transplanted. And you basically don't need to go back again. You just need to take care of your hair and not do what caused it in the first place if it's not a medical condition. The only problem is it can reach up to $20,000. That is a lot of money. And you can imagine some people would spend up to $20,000 and still go back to micro braids. Like, that is crazy to me. So if you can help it, try not to get to this point. But if you already are at this point, not all hope is lost. You can get a hair transplant. It's just gonna really hurt your bank account, okay? So hopefully all these tips helped you. So if you want to see all the other tips I've talked about growing your hairline back, you can check out this playlist right here. You can check out my other rosemary oil videos right here. Hit my face right there to subscribe if you didn't in the beginning. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!